so we will get started. It is 2 o'clock, and we are super excited to welcome you to our State Spotlight series. This is hosted by us at NCADEMI, along with our partners at the OCALI AT&AEM Center. And today we are starting our series, so one of 2 webinars, and we're focusing on Florida's approaches to Braille accessibility in state assessments today. So thank you again, Florida, for joining us. We're really excited to have your knowledge in the room today to share your experience and your tips for our other attendees and how they can also work to make their state assessments more accessible. When it comes to the webinar support and resources, please know that if you have any technical needs, you can reach out to our program assistant, Natalie Cardenas, in the chat, and she will assist you as she can. Today, we don't actually have, we did not have a request for interpreters, so there are no interpreters today, but there are captions provided in the Zoom toolbar. So check those out if you're in need of a transcript or live captions. We do have a slide deck and resources available on our webinar page, and I'll get this link put in the chat. That can be also accessed from the QR code on the bottom right hand of the screen or at a shortened bit.ly, which is bit.ly/state-spotlight. And that link is in the chat for you. It's called Webinar Resource Page. And I'll let you know that the recording of today's presentation will be available within 24 to 48 business hours on that same resources page. When it comes to your questions today, we definitely want you to participate and ask your questions. So we will allot time at the end to take your questions, and you'll be able to use the Zoom chat for that, or we're going to show you another space where you can ask your questions. You'll also be able to unmute and ask your questions over your microphone at the end. We do ask you to use the react button to raise your hand if there's any clarifying questions as we go. So, if you needed to hear something again or just needed them to clarify something, please let us know as we go, and we can do that, but hold your larger questions for the end. And that part at the end will not be recorded, so we have a little more freedom to talk as we wish. Now I'm going to kick it over to my colleague here from the AT&AEM Center, Jennifer Govender, who's going to ask you a poll question.
All right. Hi, everybody. To kick things off, we just thought we'd start with a poll to see where everybody kind of feels. So I think Natalie's going to launch the poll. If you could answer, we have oops, hold on. It covered up my question. It says, what is the most significant challenge when ensuring equitable Braille accessibility and state level testing? And I see the one that's launched doesn't quite match what's on the slide. But if you want to put in the chat, I'll read the answers. You could put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So with our answer options, we have coordination between state educational agencies or local educational agencies and vendors, timely production and delivery of tactile graphics, aligning student IEP or 504 accommodations and assistive technology with the testing platform, training test administrators on proper protocols, or other. And it should be that you can check multiple, because we always know that there could be multiple challenges at times. All right. And we actually, if you we can copy and paste this into what we're going to do, our workbook. And then you could also, we'll kind of gather what everybody's put in the chat and show the outcomes when we do that. So we'll wait just a couple more seconds. I'm seeing a lot of the first 2. I have seen some of the third. All right. Why don't we go ahead and go to the next slide? Let's see. There we go. So we have a series workbook, and this is, we're going to kind of use this to capture, we've included some of the resources. We're going to try to capture some questions. We're going to capture that feedback from the poll that we just kind of took. And you'll notice that at the top, if you chose other for another challenge, there should be an area that you could type in something for it. Here we go. So you can see under session 1 for poll responses, if you had other, feel free to type in there what some of your other challenges were. And again, at the end, when we post this, we will make sure that we kind of show what the responses were from the chat. And then also, as mentioned, if you have questions along the way, you can put them in the chat or you can add them to here on the workbook where it says session interaction. And that way, if we have a lot of questions at the end, um, then that way we can make sure we address them. You know, we can write out the answers and post them after the webinar. And there should be the link in the chat. And I see Allison has her hand raised. I'm not sure if that was also for the link, but Allison, if you had another question, please let us know. Or maybe she put it down. So, all right. So yeah, so as again, if you had another challenge, please add that to the poll responses. And then again, you can ask questions in the chat and we'll transfer it to the workbook, or type them directly in there, and that will allow us to capture all of this as we move along. All right, so moving forward, I just want to say I've had the pleasure of meeting with this team over the past couple of months. And I loved learning about all their work, how they're supporting the Braille accessibility and state assessment. So I'm really excited for everybody to hear directly from them about their experiences, their journey, lessons learned. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Florida team, let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their work.
Good morning, everyone. We are the Accessible Assessments Department. Our fiscal agent is Hillsborough County Public Schools, and under that, we are through the Florida Instructional Materials Center for the visually impaired. Quite the mouthful there, but that's where we're from. First up, we have Kathy Krempleski. She is a Braille and Accessible Assessment Specialist. Also here with us today is Karen Reno, another Braille and Accessible Assessment Specialist. And I am Victoria Short, a statewide educational specialist for the blind and visually impaired. And we're so happy you're all here with us today to learn a little bit more about what we do.
All right, I believe it's my turn, and we are going to hop right in here and let you know that for this webinar today, we are going to describe the development of Florida's statewide Braille testing program, including key milestones and adaptations made to support students who read Braille. Sorry, I'm learning this whole thing here. All right, 2, identify the needs and solutions developed within Florida's assessment system to ensure accessible statewide testing for students who read Braille. And then we're also going to explore emerging advancements in computer-based Braille testing for students who read Braille. All right. So to get us started, the assessment guide created by NCADEMI and OCALI is full of great resources, and you'll find that just about everything referenced in our PowerPoint can be found in the guide. We will mention the specific sections as they apply throughout the presentation. All right, and also throughout this presentation, we will be referencing paper-based hard copy Braille tests, and paper-based hard copy Braille tests will be indicated by a paper and pencil icon. Computer-based Braille tests will be indicated by the computer icon, and these icons will appear in the top right corner of the slide. All right, so here is a brief overview of the Florida statewide assessment system. So we use a progress monitoring system with 3 required assessment administrations that track student learning across the school year. So you'll see in fall, we have PM1, which would be progress monitoring 1, which is technically the beginning of the school year, like a baseline. And then in winter, PM2, which checks the student's progress in the middle of the year. And then spring is in PM3, and that is our end of year high stakes assessment. Okay. All right, so, excuse me, under Section 1, Accommodations for Braille Users, Part C, Use of Accessible Formats, the Accommodations Guide highlights the importance of providing Braille users with test materials in an appropriate accessible format, such as Braille, large print, audio, digital formats, or a combination. Offering accessible formats allows the students to demonstrate their knowledge rather than their ability to access the test. In Florida, computer-based testing is the default option for all students. Paper-based testing is always an accommodation and must be selected on the student's IEP or 504 plan. We do have some paper-based options available, regular print, large print, one item per page, or hard copy Braille. Florida is beginning to offer computer-based testing Braille Access, CBTBA, sample items to provide practice opportunities for a new operational testing option that will be available in the next few years. In Section 1, Accommodations, Part B, Use of Assistive Technology, the guide encourages the use of the same student devices or software in the assessment situation as in the instructional environment. So it is best practice for students to go into the assessment environment prior to the actual assessment time using those same tools. All right. So we serve pretty much all of the students. General education assessments are provided for all grades and subjects. And then we also offer the Florida alternate assessment for all grades and subjects. In accordance with the Braille Authority of North America, or BANA, they recommend that the following Braille codes be offered for both general ed and alternate assessments, and we do provide all those following Braille codes: Unified English Braille with Nimith contracted, UEB with Nimith uncontracted, UEB Math Science contracted, and UEB Math Science uncontracted. All right, and this aligns with Section 1, Accommodations, Part C, accessible formats. That section lists the specific format aspects for consideration, which include contracted versus uncontracted and transcription of technical materials. In Appendix B of the assessment guide, you can see some more information regarding UEB Math Science versus UEB with Nimith. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Kathy.
All right. So now we're going to get into the identified need, the first one, which was hard copy Braille. So in July of 2002, the governor's Blue Ribbon Task Force was directed to establish procedures to create high quality paper-based hard copy Braille assessments for state testing to ensure access for students with visual impairments. And this was the foundation that's led to the Accessible Assessment Department being formed that we now have. So the solution implemented for hard copy Braille with the Governor's Blue Ribbon Task Force, it addressed Braille codes and formats offered. Item reviews for accessibility, and then ensuring that creation and evaluation of accessible testing materials is done by staff with the appropriate professional credentials. This solution for hard copy Braille meant that teachers were not expected to create their own tactile graphics. And overall, this created consistency, ensuring visually impaired students were interacting with the same content. And the Accessible Assessments Department was created to assist with the development and review of modifications for each test item. So the step-by-step implementation process of hard copy Braille and computer-based testing Braille access closely aligns with Section 2. Test requirements and components. Part A, review of assessment items by a fairness/bias committee, and Part B, production of Braille and tactile graphics. These sections elaborate on the importance of evaluating Braille items and tactile graphics so that the Braille assessments support appropriate access and valid results. It details the process at different stages of test development. So let's look at Florida's process. So an item is reviewed at each of these stages. So first we have the bias review, and the bias review is an opportunity to ensure items and stimuli can be accessed in Braille prior to the finalization of the test form. That allows us the replacement of items or stimuli that would cause bias on a test for students with visual impairments. And this is something that got implemented as we went along, and we realized, instead of waiting for something to get on a test that then we had to deal with, let's look at these items earlier when there's something that can be changed. Then there was item review, and that is the opportunity to note any modifications needed to establish test forms for accessibility in Braille. And then we go through post-Blackline review, and that's an opportunity to review the finalized test forms and update modifications to align with any changes they made after we looked at it at item review, as sometimes happens. And then most crucial is the proofreading by contracted third-party tactile proofreaders. And we really believe in having it read by tactile proofreaders, since the students will be reading it tactually. There can be a big difference between how Braille looks and how it feels. It's an opportunity to review and correct any Braille formatting or typographical errors found in the test, and the ability to adjust the modifications if needed to make the Braille more accessible. For example, adding an additional label to a tactile graphic if that tactile proofreader was struggling to understand the tactile graphic without the label. So there's all throughout the process a way to make adjustments and implement those adjustments so that the final product is what's going to be best for students. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tori.
Yes, so now, as indicated in the top right corner of our screen, we're switching to a little bit of our computer-based testing Braille access information. So we're going to start with our identified need for the computer-based testing Braille access. In spring of 2023, there was a directive for all statewide assessments to be presented in an online format. And from that directive had the desire to develop an adaptive computer-based test for Braille readers in an online format like their peers. And that desire also links up with the assessment guide in section 3, Administration of Braille Assessments, Part C, which notes that best practice is to deliver equivalent practice test opportunities for Braille users. So our solution implemented for computer-based testing Braille access, I'll start by saying that the recommended list of actions that we used for this process closely aligns with section 3, the Administration of Braille Assessments, Part C. That very closely aligned with the process we developed to get our project started. So this is the solution that's been implemented so far. We've begun developing the computer-based testing Braille access testing format in the existing online secure browser. There's use of a consistent screen reading software. There's development of emboss on-demand files for access to tactile graphics. And the initial plan with these emboss on-demand files is for everyone to use uniform software. So right now we're recommending Tiger Software Suite, Duxbury Braille Translation Software, and JAWS, just as a few examples. And we also have the plan for uniform hardware. So we're recommending for our users to have the View Plus Rogue Embosser. And with these uniform hardware and softwares, that's going to help us ensure that the materials are produced consistently. Also, we have noted that the use of MathML when math notation appears. Our project right now is currently on hold due to technological limitations with JAWS and our secure browser, but I really enjoyed how the accommodations guide in section 2, Test Requirements and Components, Part C, really did a great job of outlining expanding on what MathML is and how it affects the presentation of mathematical and scientific content when using screen reading programs. So that was very helpful documentation when we were consulting the guide. We also have an option to use a refreshable Braille display through our testing process. Now, our state's approved technology set up for assessment clearly listed all the hardware and software components that would be required. And this approved list can actually help the educational teams plan for the future technology needs of a student. As we previously stated, the accommodations guide in the section 1, accommodations part B, use of assistive technology, they noted that students should be using the same devices and software in the assessment situation as they do in that instructional environment. Really enjoyed the fact that they highlighted that switching between compatible or similar devices could actually be disruptive, challenging, or even more demanding. Moving into our step-by-step implementation for computer-based testing Braille access. Similar to the hard copy Braille, we do start with item selections at some point. So we learned through our process that not all item types are accessible at this time. So through our studies and our trials and errors, we found that interactive graphs in math and in English language arts, there is a question type we have called an external copy block, which requires a student to select a sentence from a paragraph that's embedded with the passage. With both of these item types, we found that to navigate and indicate answers, it really significantly increased the cognitive load of a user to where we rendered them just not accessible at this time. We also conduct item reviews, and that gives us a chance to evaluate the Braille tags and emboss on-demand modifications. And we do have a stage of emboss on-demand proofreading, which includes a secure browser online functional review. And that's where we're ensuring the usability from a student's perspective with all devices and tools. So that would include the refreshable Braille display, JAWS screen reading software, and our student laptop setup when we're doing these reviews. Also, under that emboss on-demand proofreading review is an accuracy review of the Braille, specifically looking at its formatting and how it works with the secure browser when you're accessing them both at the same time. I'm going to turn it over to Karen, who's going to give us a little bit of information about our partnerships. And Karen, you are muted, so I'm going to leave your partnerships right there for you to start. There we go.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought I clicked the button. All right, so if you're looking for more information regarding partnerships, the Accommodations Guide in Section 4, Supportive Roles, contains the responsibilities of each group and how they, and there's a lot of them, the state, educational agency, local educational agency, the accessible media producers, how they can all work together to create accessible assessments for all Braille users. As you can see, our partnerships include the Florida Department of Education, and then underneath that umbrella is the Office of K-12 Student Assessment, the Test Development Center, or TDC, and sometimes we consult with, sometimes they consult with the Bureau of Exceptional, or we consult with the Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services, known as BEAS. And then we are the contracted accessible assessment department. But inside our umbrella, then, we also include those subcontractors that we talked about a little bit before. Both Tori and Kathy hit on them. The item reviewers, the tactile proofreaders, and also some possibility of some copy holders. Okay. We also work with the testing companies. So Cambium Assessment is who Florida is currently contracted with, and they contract with the Data Recognition Corporation for, I believe it's for delivery of materials, and then the American Printing House for the Blind. Pearson and Pearson Braille Services assist with creation of Braille materials, and Pearson still handles the science and social studies pieces of Florida assessment. And then Renaissance Learning is who Florida is working with for the K-2 tests only. So we just, as you can see, there's a lot of different people that we communicate with, and there's a lot of stakeholders involved at every level. So we recommend having a single point of contact between each stakeholder for continuity. So there are people that we specifically go to in each of these different partners that guide us in our communication, and then we can include larger groups as needed. So we do communicate with many of these stakeholders daily. We also have regularly scheduled meetings to discuss certain projects and different pieces that we're currently working on. And then there's also larger scale annual meetings that help us maintain communication within the state. All right, and now Kathy is going to talk about tools.
Hey, this is Jenna. I'm going to pop in real quick just to ask a clarifying question in the chat. Tracy was wondering if your online test is adaptive or a fixed form.
Currently, our online, I'll start here, and then if one of you wants to pop in, you can. Currently, the online tests are fixed form sample items. We have not moved to operational tests yet, but the goal is, yes, to eventually have adaptive operational tests. That is our goal in the next few years. Will give us some time.
Awesome, thanks.
All right. Okay, so getting into the tools involved. So Florida Statewide Assessments Production Specifications is a very large document that covers anything and everything with Florida assessments. But for this, it's a guidance document that details Florida production specifications, which includes a whole section about how Braille stimuli and items should be created, both for hard copy Braille and computer-based testing Braille access. Then we also do assessment webinar series for test administrators and teachers of students with visual impairments. The assessment guide, section 3, administration of Braille assessments, part B, recommends to provide clear state level guidance to local education authorities. This is one mode of communication and training we try to use to reach that population. We've also developed some resources that have been added to the interactive note workbook as linked resources. So we made the Braille ordering information sheet to bring awareness to district level staff about the different Braille codes offered for assessment, examples of each code, helpful Tide notes, which is the central administrative platform, and a quick reference chart displaying the codes for ordering materials when placing an order in the platform for a hard copy Braille test. We also saw a need and created the Braille page numbering at a glance document to help familiarize test administrators with the Braille page numbering system used on statewide assessments. This handout includes the layout of a Braille cell and examples of the numeric indicator being used for single, double, and multiple page number ranges. We created a survey for Braille versions of Florida statewide assessments that's available year-round for all the administrations. It's in the assessment guide. It is recommended to utilize a post-assessment evaluation. The recommended steps can be found in section 2, test requirements and components, part D, evaluation that the test matches the needs of Braille users. And then we're in the process of developing a checklist for teachers of students with visual impairments to use for ensuring all tasks are completed to prepare for each administration window broken down by month. So that's another thing. Oops. All right. And then I'm going to turn it over to Tori.
Yes. So looking back, we're going to review a bit of the impact. The impact of developing Florida's statewide Braille testing program has really led to some phenomenal things. First up, we have quality accessible assessments that are used for educational planning throughout a student's educational career. We are offering multiple types of testing formats that allows those IEP teams to select the testing format that's most appropriate for the individual student. And once computer-based testing Braille access is rolled out, this format is also going to offer adaptive testing. That's our goal down the road. Hard copy Braille will remain fixed form and is going to continue to be offered. That option will not be going away. And as we've gone through this process, kind of built the plane as we're flying it, is like what we like to say, we have some lessons learned that we would like to share. So through this process, a bit of the challenges. we realize that collaboration between all stakeholders is absolutely necessary, not optional. It was necessary. We have great stakeholders that we worked with to coordinate. It takes a lot of coordination between stakeholders regarding contractual agreements, especially related to the scope of work. And that requires time, which sometimes requires additional meetings or additional time just spent collaborating together. In computer-based testing Braille access, when we were getting started, the acquiring technology and training resources was a bit of a learning curve for us. So through that process, we learned that we needed to get some more buy-in from districts and include their IT departments on this process as well, to let them know that, you know, this is coming, this has been approved, and providing documentation to them to show that it is an approved testing format that's coming. We also were just kind of brought to our awareness through that process that we wanted to make sure that students have the appropriate baseline technology skills prior to engaging with these online sample items. So that kind of helped guide our thinking as we were making resources for teachers and kind of organizing the information and letting them know what the students will need to do so that they could practice to take these tests. As we went through the process, there were some adjustments made along the way. We did add more staff. It takes more than one person, is what we realized. There were additional reviews at earlier stages as the tests are being created, which we've highlighted the importance and the benefit of looking at those items early on. And we did conduct a pilot program in the beginning of spring 2025, I think, where we gauged the interest of this testing format and got some feedback on how it was operating at that time. And that was very, very helpful information as we've been preparing to educate others about what's out there for us. And I'm going to turn it back over to Kathy.
All right, so a developing process. We're always working to improve the system. Schedules ensure there's enough time to create an accurate Braille assessment. So we're constantly updating the process and making changes within. Early involvement is essential. We see items at every stage, starting at the beginning of print test creation. And then with the schedules, we want to make sure that we know, acknowledge how much work goes into creating a schedule and that it's workable and doable for all the stakeholders, and how important it is that everyone has access to the same schedule to keep everyone on target. And then the biggest thing with this is Braille takes up a lot longer than print to develop. And a lot of times the people we're working with don't necessarily understand that at first, and helping them, educating them and helping them to understand that it does take a lot longer and why it takes longer. But then also you can't begin Braille development until the print version is finalized. And even now we continue to evolve the process, and when we are working on tests and when we're starting everything, to allow everybody to have the time needed to create the print versions and then later the Braille versions in time for the students to get the materials at the same time as everybody else. And then advice for other states. Educating all stakeholders about the needs and differences of students who read Braille. We suggest start with getting Department of Education personnel on board for why accessible Braille testing is important. If it is a priority for the Department of Education, then it requires the testing companies to make Braille timelines and testing a priority. And then ensure a process for ordering Braille tests in the correct code is established. And additional notes about the computer-based testing Braille access that we've learned along the way. Start with reading, writing, and social studies, as those only require unified English Braille. You don't have to deal with the 2 Braille code math issue and science issue. And then build the program from there. Also evaluate the student experience in the final version, not just at the earlier stages. What we are learning is that as things are updated, things that were fixed can become broken, like as different upgrades and updates. And so really all along the way until it's finalized, there needs to be that evaluation to make sure that the student experience is consistent and stable all the way through. And then an additional note about computer-based testing Braille access. The program is built, consider who will be responsible for providing technology if you want everyone to use the same thing for consistency of material. So these are just some of the logistical issues that we've been dealing with and we're continuing to figure out as we go along and as we progress with this process. And that concludes everything that we were going to present.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing all of your work and, all making sure that students, Braille readers especially, have access to statewide assessments. It's been fun to learn your journey. I can see a lot of people love the idea of the checklist, and I know we had some access issues, and you guys were going to work on that behind the scenes. So I would just suggest that some of the participants check the workbook, in the next couple of days, and hopefully that access is updated. But thank you for those that let us know that was a concern. But again, we're really glad and appreciate your willingness to share both the successes and those lessons that you've learned, because we know they go hand in hand with everything that we do. But as I can see in the workbook, well, actually, we're going to go on to the next. Yep, we do want to make sure that, your feedback matters for our series. So we do have a survey that they will drop into the chat. And it's a very short survey. It just gives us some feedback on the series. So the first part of the series, I guess, and then, our takeaways and what we can do in the future to continue to support Braille access on state assessments.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I'll just point out that survey link is in the chat, as Jen mentioned. You can also scan the QR code on the right-hand side or find the survey at bit.ly/series-survey and the number 1. So it would be great if you could at least get that tab open and thinking about that as we wrap up our webinar today. Please know that we continue to want to support you, and you can reach out to NCADEMI and the OCALI and AT&AEM Center at any time. At NCADEMI, the best way to reach us is at our email address, which is ncademy@usu.edu. Or you can call or text us at 435-554-8213. You can find the Braille Guide and lots more at ncademy.org. And we also encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn, because that is where we post our latest resources and webinar opportunities such as this. And I'll let Jen share some more contact information for the AT&AEM Center.
All right. Yep. Our website really is our landing area that you could contact us through, but it is ataem.org. And our email is ataem_info@ocali.org. We are on a couple different social media platforms, so we do share a lot through there. So if you follow us, you'll be able to get our updates as well as NCADEMI's, because we do share both of those. And we do have all of this contact information in the workbook if you needed to refer to it later.